have we got a shocking and very important news story for you today. This is absolutely amazing. A 23-year-old independent YouTube journalist has broken a story that resulted, it would appear, in Mike Waltz dropping out of the race. Let's take a peek at the YouTube video that came out today exposing even more dirt.
This fraud.
This is the worst fraud in human history.
How have Somalians gotten into the system to fraud the American taxpayer?
They have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fraudulent companies set up, and they're sucking billions of dollars out of the state of Minnesota.
And how?
This is absolutely shocking. How could this fraud happen to such a degree? And when you dig into this, there's not even the minimum amount of trying to appear that these daycares and other facilities are actually operating. When this 23-year-old independent journalist, Nick Shirley, went around to these daycare operations, nobody answered the door. The doors were locked. The windows were all blacked out. And when he tried to enroll his son in daycare, people turned him away. There were no prices. There was not even the minimum amount of feigning running a real legitimate business, which makes me wonder. People always say follow the money, but maybe in this case we need to follow the votes. Let's take a peek at a bit more of this news story.
Well, one example would be with the hundreds of child care facilities that they have set up, and on every one that I visited, and I've been to maybe 100 of them or more, I never ever have seen one child at any facilities ever over the past 7 years, 8 years.
So how could you go for 7 years operating daycare facilities without any kids? That's absolutely friggin' insane.
I've been to maybe 100 of them or more. I never ever have seen one child at any facilities ever over the past 7 years, 8 years.
What are the businesses that are being used to fraud the taxpayer here in Minnesota? You have the daycares. What are all of them?
So you have, you have child care, you have adult daycare, you have in-home health care, you have straight health care, and nobody really knows how that's defined. And then you have transportation, non-emergency medical transportation. And if you do a search, you'll see that the state of Minnesota says they have 1,020 non-emergency medical transportation companies. And my research is showing that 95% of those are Somali owned. And what I know is that the people writing the checks at the state of Minnesota never, ever, ever verify that any trip was ever made, or that any appointment was ever made with a dentist, chiropractor, or anything.
I mean, I'm always a big believer in private enterprise, and I've personally experienced how government does not know how to run any businesses whatsoever, but this takes it to entirely the next level. How can there be so few checks and balances? How come nobody checked? How can millions or perhaps billions of dollars have been paid to companies that are not even operating, or not even making the slightest attempt to look like legitimate businesses? This totally pisses me off, because you and I, common everyday Americans, are actually paying for this complete disaster. So would appear from the news clips that we're seeing right here, right now. I haven't personally investigated this, but this looks like a scam. Follow the money or follow the votes. How is it possible that the government didn't know about this? How can you pay millions and millions of dollars to a variety of companies and never bother to check that they're actually operating according to the way that they said? This is like craziness.
A man who came through with 2 suitcases, and he put on his declaration that he had $750,000 in cash. And so the TSA agent said, whoa, wait a minute here. And so they took him to a secure room. They opened up the suitcases. Sure enough, $750,000 in cash. And so she called the police. The police came, and then the officer said, well, I've never had this before. This is such a large amount of money. He said, where'd this money come from? The guy said, I don't have to tell you, I don't know. And so he called his superior, and the superior said, okay, I got to make a call and get back to you. And then he called him back and said, you got to let him go, because he declared the money. He goes, no, we can't let it. So they're not even verifying where these funds came from. And so how deep does this go? How many people are involved? How bad is this?
That's exactly the question. How bad is this? If that's true, that somebody can walk through customs with almost $1 million in cash and not be questioned. I mean, I just got back from visiting Canada for Christmas. I was very careful to declare what I had, and I thought $10,000 was the maximum. What?
So they shut down Creative Minds, and they reopened the next day under a new license, and they called it Super Kids Daycare Center. But they still have their they happen so fast, they still have their Creative Minds daycare sign on the building.
Wow.
Let's keep going. So for just there alone, we've uncovered $11 million worth of fraud in 3 daycares.
So then there was...
Wow. The links to these full videos will be in the description as usual, so you can check this out. It's absolutely amazing to me that a 23-year-old independent YouTube journalist is the one to break this story. Nick Shirley has 3 million views on this video that he dropped last week, exposing the Minnesota fraud around daycares and other things. And this is really a video worth watching, although he did drop a new video today, January 5th, 2026, which is the video that we've been watching so far. I'm just going to play a little bit of this video. They're totally worth watching. But when you see this, I mean, it's so friggin' obvious. I should stop talking. Let's just watch it together.
Hello, we'd like to ask where the money's going. What do you guys think about the fraud that's taking place here in Minnesota?
I don't think anybody is enabling fraud to happen.
Hold Governor Walz accountable for this.
What was this money spent on? 1.26 million. What was that money spent on? There aren't any kids.
Answer the question. Are there children? There's no children inside this building.
Potentially the largest
Daycare with no
scandal
children?
in U.S. history is taking place in Minnesota, as literally billions of dollars have been funneled through Somali-ran fraudulent businesses. So much fraud, it could actually almost replace the entire GDP of Somalia.
That's freaking shocking. Replace Somalia's GDP. Oh my God, this is so big.
These fraudsters have worked hand in hand with the Minnesota government as they enabled billions of dollars to be given to fraudulent businesses underneath welfare purposes. Some of this money eventually landed in the hands of terrorist groups in Somalia like the Al-Shabaab, and others enriched themselves all at the US taxpayers' expense. And in this video we will break down all of the fraud from start to finish, from going to the fraudulent businesses and confronting the people who are making millions of dollars from the government. And we will also be confronting the incompetent government leaders who let this fraud happen. And to make this happen, I met up with a man who's been doing his own investigation for years now, as he has seen the fraud firsthand. His name is David. Let's get into this and be prepared to be shocked.
How deep is this fraud here inside of Minnesota?
It is far worse than anybody can imagine. You heard it's 7 to 10 billion and maybe more, and now the numbers have been revised and put out there publicly that they think it's more like 8 billion. How I got involved is that where my office is here in Minneapolis, I'm sort of in the heart of all of this fraud, and I would see these child care centers. I said, well, there aren't any kids there. It's the middle of the day, and all I see are a couple of guys standing out front smoking. And then I'd go by another daycare and I'd see the same thing. I said, well, where do these kids play? And so I started to go online and look, and I said, this place is licensed for 80 children. They had 0 children every time I went by there.
This is shocking to me that an everyday citizen and an independent journalist who works for YouTube basically are breaking this story. It seems like just common sense or a little bit of checks and balances that this easily could have been seen by the government. Hey, how about checking in after you send somebody a check for $1 million? Anyway, I wanted to bring this story to you. The links are in the description. What are the takeaways that we can take from this? I think the key takeaway that I want to say here is let's not just follow the money, but let's also follow the votes. And when this kind of fraud is existing in our government, we need to take action, in my opinion. I mean, so many of us are working so hard, we pay our taxes, we do our bit, and then to see money, billions of dollars wasted on this scale, it's just heart-wrenching. I don't have the answer, and I didn't report all of this independently, but these are the breaking news stories today. So as we wrap this up, let's hear from Dave Smith, part of the problem.
Say uncovered, but demonstrated. Maybe some other people would be like, could claim the first ones to have ever talked about this. But he's a guy who is essentially, I think, like like an independent guerrilla journalist kind of type guy who makes YouTube videos. And he's not only like exposing what is apparently a huge government fraud, but then also just implicitly is like a huge indictment of the corporate media in general, law enforcement, both federally and at the state level and locally. And it's just very interesting. He's got this 45-minute expose where he goes around and looks at a bunch of different daycares and where there's all these, which is a policy that Tim Walz, running for vice president, was championing. That they've done all this amazing funding of daycares in his home state, and in fact, this was his promise that him and Kamala Harris were going to bring this to the on the national level, and now there's the last I checked, 115 million people have watched this video, and so it's I don't know, it's fascinating on many levels. It exposes how, like there's newspapers out there in Minnesota, there's local TV news shows, and there's all types, as we know in this country, of federal or national news apparatuses. I should say national, although kind of federal. And none of them have done an expose like this, where they got 115 million people to see, oh my God, look at what's going on here. Now, I have seen...
So that's the key point. How come this 23-year-old Nick Shirley is breaking this news story along with somebody who lives in the area and passes by these daycare facilities, noticing there's 0 kids there, instead of a reporter, that we would expect? So if you're still having faith in the legacy media, this is another nail in their coffin. I'm Aurora Winter, and this is Strategic Basics, where we bring you breaking news and turn that into business breakthroughs. And if you like this episode, please like and subscribe and let us know what you think in the comments. We'll see you on the next video.